We begin, as all roads do, in Rome. For over 1,000 years, to be Roman was to be part of the greatest empire the West has ever known. It was a legal status, a mark of civilization, a citizen of the world. But the man in this forum, in, say, the year 400 AD, would have had no concept of himself as Italian. That word, that identity, did not exist for him. So, when did it happen? When did the Roman become the Italian? The answer is not a single date on a calendar, but a story that unfolds over 2,000 years. Our journey must begin not with an ending, but with a beginning, with the raw material of Italy itself. Before Rome was an empire, the peninsula was a patchwork of different peoples, the Latins, the Sabines, the Etruscans, and Greek colonists in the south. They were the various Italic tribes, the diverse peoples whom Rome would conquer and, crucially, absorb. The genius of the Roman Republic was not just its army, but its political flexibility. Defeated enemies were not simply enslaved, they were turned into allies. Over centuries, these allies fought alongside Romans, adopted Roman law, and were granted increasing levels of citizenship. This process, called Romanization, was so complete that by 88 BC, after a bloody civil war, all free inhabitants of the peninsula south of the Po River were granted Roman citizenship. The poet Cicero could soon speak of Tota Italia, all Italy, united under Rome's banner. They were not Italians, but they were a unified political entity under Roman rule. But political unity does not create national identity. For that, we need a catalyst. For centuries, that catalyst was trauma. As the Western Roman Empire collapsed under waves of Gothic and Lombard invasions, the political unity of the peninsula shattered. Yet, a new kind of unity was being forged in its place. The one institution that survived the chaos was the Church. It was the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, who now stood as the moral and often political authority. It is in this moment that the word Roman begins to change. In the East, the empire lived on, its Greek-speaking citizens still called themselves Romaeoi, Romans. But in the West, the term Roman drifted away from the fallen empire and attached itself to the Church. To be Roman was now to be of the Latin Rite, to answer to Rome. The people of the peninsula were now subjects of a jigsaw puzzle of kingdoms, duchies, and the Papal States. They were Florentines, Venetians, Neapolitans, and Romans. But a new idea began to stir among poets and intellectuals. In the 14th century, Petrarch wrote passionate verses calling for an end to the barbarian dominance of foreign powers, invoking the glory of a shared Italian fatherland. In the 16th century, Machiavelli, in the final, desperate chapter of The Prince, begged the rulers of the peninsula to seize Italy and free her from the barbarians, quoting Petrarch's famous line that ancient valor is not yet dead in Italian hearts. This wasn't a political movement, it was a cultural dream. An idea that the people of this land were connected by a shared language, a shared literature, and the shared ghost of Rome. The dream needed a spark. It came, as so many European revolutions did, with Napoleon. His conquest of Italy at the dawn of the 19th century swept away ancient feudal borders and introduced modern ideas of nationhood, law, and citizenship. Though his empire fell, the seed was planted. In its wake arose a movement we call the Risorgimento, the resurrection. Visionaries like Giuseppe Mazzini inspired a new generation with a vision of a unified, republican Italy. While pragmatic politicians like Cavour worked the levers of diplomacy, romantic revolutionaries like Garibaldi captured the world's imagination with his red-shirt volunteers. The goal was no longer just to kick out the Austrian and Spanish rulers, but to forge a single state from the ashes. In 1861, the dream became a reality. The Kingdom of Italy was proclaimed. But it was incomplete. Venice was added in 1866, and finally, in 1870, as French troops withdrew during the Franco-Prussian War, Italian soldiers breached the walls of Rome at Porta Pia. Rome became the capital of the new nation. One could argue that this is the moment. In 1870, the people of the peninsula became, in a political sense, Italians. But even then, the question was not settled. The common person in Sicily or the Veneto often spoke a local dialect, not Italian. They felt more loyalty to their village than to the distant parliament in Rome. The new nation had to create Italians. And in the 20th century, that project took a dark turn. The fascist regime of Benito Mussolini seized on the dream of Italian greatness, twisting it into a violent, imperialist ideology. He claimed the legacy of the Roman Empire, using the ancient symbols of Roman power to fuel a modern, and brutal, nationalist fervor. In this vision, to be Italian was to be a conqueror, a successor to the Caesars. This was a dangerous answer to our question. So, when did the Romans become Italians? The historian's answer is complex. The Latins and Sabines became Romans through conquest and law. The Romans became Italians first through the longings of poets, then through the trauma of foreign domination, and finally, through the political vision of the Risorgimento. But the true answer is perhaps more beautiful. It was not a single moment, but a millennia-long conversation between a glorious past and an uncertain future. The Roman became an Italian not when a king was crowned or a city was conquered, but when the people of this sun-drenched peninsula finally believed they belonged to one another. And that, perhaps, is a process that continues to this day. Don't stop here, the next story might just blow your mind. Subscribe, hit like, and share this with anyone who craves heart-pounding suspense and unforgettable twists.